we're going to be putting a very large tariff on chips and semiconductors. If you're building in the United States or have committed to build, without question committed to build in the United States, there will be no charge.
In the days after August 1st, the trade battle between Washington and its key partners took an unexpected turn. President Donald Trump pushed forward with one of his most aggressive proposals yet: a 100% tariff on imported computer chips and semiconductors. His message was blunt: build in the United States or pay double. This was more than a new trade policy. It was a move that sent tremors through global supply chains, rattled the markets, and left allies like Canada watching closely. Chips aren't just inside laptops. They're in cars, refrigerators, and the everyday devices people rely on. A shock at the source means higher prices across the board.
President Trump and Apple CEO Tim Cook just announced a new $100 billion commitment to manufacturing in the U.S.
The reality is that Apple invests billions per year already in the U.S., right?
And while Cook didn't announce the Made in USA iPhone that Trump maybe wanted, he did flatter Trump by giving him a customized plaque with a 24-karat gold base, of course.
Trump staged the chip tariff rollout with Apple's $100 billion U.S. investment as the showcase, while pressuring Intel's CEO and signaling that political alignment mattered as much as business. Many such investments were already planned, making the tariff more a political bargaining chip than a genuine industrial policy. On paper, the plan was about bringing money and jobs back to America. In practice, the economics tell a more complicated story. Independent studies, including the Yale Budget Lab's August 2025 review, estimate that tariffs implemented this year could raise household costs by $2,200 to $3,800 annually. That's because tariffs don't stay on corporate balance sheets. They show up in the final price tag for consumers. And while Trump points to corporate investments as proof of success, many of these projects predate the tariff. Apple's $100 billion pledge, Samsung's Arizona expansion, TSMC's multi-billion-dollar fabs, all were in motion thanks to the 2022 CHIPS Act and the AI-driven race for capacity. The tariff may have reinforced these moves, but it didn't create them. There's also the jobs question. Modern semiconductor fabrication is highly automated. Even with new facilities, the number of direct manufacturing jobs created is limited, and the work often requires specialized skills, narrowing the employment impact. In reality, most of these investments were already planned for strategic and technological reasons, with the tariff acting more as a political lever than the true catalyst.
John, these sound like bully tariffs. Auto, for example. Kiss the ring or face the tariffs seems to be the message.
Yeah, bring a 24-karat gold plaque to the White House, or the tariff story could go on. And obviously that's a complicated story for companies and countries like Canada as well.
For Canada, the chip tariff was another reminder that Trump's trade pressure can target any sector. Prime Minister Mark Carney's response has been deliberate. Maintain the backbone of the Canada-US-Mexico agreement, which still keeps about 85% of Canadian exports tariff-free while refusing to rush into any bad deal. Ottawa has rolled out a $1.2 billion Canadian dollar support package for industries already hit by the August 1st increase on non-customer goods, shielding sectors like softwood lumber from immediate damage. On technology, Canada is deepening partnerships outside the U.S. while staying embedded in North America's semiconductor supply chain. This dual track reduces risk if the U.S. imposes the full 100% chip tariff without broad exemptions. Ontario Premier Doug Ford has warned that Trump could move to reopen CUSMA early, but Canada's united stance has been to prepare, not panic. The strategy is to engage on favorable terms, not from a position of weakness.
Hit that guy back as hard as we possibly can, and that's what we need to do. And we can do it. We can build anything here in Canada, absolutely anything.
The 100% chip tariff is more than an economic measure. It's a negotiating tactic, a show of force, and a test of loyalty. But it also carries the risk of higher consumer prices, distorted investment incentives, and unresolved technological gaps. Trump has made himself the central actor in this drama, but Canada has not been cast as a passive player. Under Carney's watch, the country is protecting its industries, diversifying its alliances, and holding its ground in trade talks. The fight over chips is just one front in a broader contest of leverage. And in that contest, endurance, not speed, will decide who comes out ahead.
The president announced a deal with South Korea, which of course is a key U.S. trading partner, with just 2 days to spare before the deadline.
Along with the 15% tariffs, South Korea will invest $350 billion for investments owned and controlled by the United States.
2 days before his self-imposed August 1st deadline, Donald Trump made his move. He announced a deal with South Korea, a key trading partner, locking in tariffs at 15%. That headline came fast and loud, timed for maximum political impact. But behind the celebration, serious questions piled up. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick claimed South Korea would invest $350 billion into the U.S., and that 90% of profits would benefit Americans, all at Trump's direction. But no legal framework was shown, no enforcement mechanism explained. It echoed Trump's earlier deal with Japan, where flashy promises of $550 billion in investments were quietly walked back to a fraction of that total. And again, the math didn't add up. Just like with Europe, which recently pledged to buy massive volumes of U.S. energy, there's no clear indication whether these countries need that much, or whether the U.S. can even supply it. The numbers sounded big, but their foundation looked paper-thin. Trump's latest announcement, a deal with South Korea, followed the same pattern as his earlier agreements. While Seoul has confirmed steps toward formalizing the agreement, the details remain thin. There's no binding treaty language, no timeline for implementation, no clear enforcement mechanisms. The claimed 90-10 profit split raised eyebrows, especially since it hasn't been officially documented. Trump's model seems clear: stack huge numbers, broadcast them through friendly media, and create the illusion of control. Fox News even claimed that tariffs brought in $150 billion from foreign countries, when in reality, those tariffs are paid by American companies, often passed on to consumers. It's economic theater. The deals look impressive in headlines, but underneath, companies are quietly warning of layoffs, price hikes, and shrinking earnings. The Federal Reserve has now delayed a rate cut, citing uncertainty from these very tariff actions.
With the Americans are ongoing. It's possible that they may not conclude by the 1st of August.
While Trump crafted his South Korea announcement, Canada's position came into focus, and it wasn't what Washington wanted to hear. Prime Minister Mark Carney confirmed that no deal had been reached with the U.S., and that none is expected by the August 1st deadline. Canada's negotiators remain in Washington, but the message was clear: Ottawa will not rush into a bad agreement. Carney described the talks as complex and constructive, emphasizing areas like defense, security, and investment. But he gave no hint that Canada would follow the same path as Europe or Asia. And unlike Trump's announce first, explain later strategy, Canada chose clarity. No deal until the terms truly benefit Canadians. In less than a week, Trump had sealed back-to-back deals with Europe and South Korea, both promoted with billion-dollar promises and patriotic slogans. But Carney's refusal to sign on, even under the pressure of an artificial deadline, exposed a critical flaw in the president's game plan. Trump bet that all allies would fall in line before August 1st. That strategy worked with Brussels and Seoul. But Canada didn't blink. And now, the contrast is striking. While Trump claims to win big, his negotiating partners, from Japan to Europe to Korea, all quietly dispute the terms. Canada, at least, is saying so publicly. This isn't just about one missed deal. With each flashy but shallow agreement, Trump is creating economic confusion. The uncertainty has already caused the Fed to hold back, while businesses brace for cost shocks. And if Canada continues to resist, the White House may soon respond with steep tariffs, potentially up to 35% on Canadian goods. That would hit cross-border trade hard. And unlike Japan or South Korea, Canada has signaled it won't be bullied into submission. In the final hours before Trump's August 1st deadline, the scoreboard isn't as clean as the headlines suggest. The deals with Europe and South Korea look rushed, vague, and politically tailored. But Canada's delay may prove the most strategic move yet. Carney isn't just negotiating. He's calling out the game. And now, all eyes turn to August 1st.
But for the rest of the world, we're going to have things done by Friday. And Friday is not that far away, so you should expect, we said, August 1st is the date that we're setting all these rates, and they are off to the races after that.
As the calendar approaches August 1st, President Trump's trade ultimatum is looming. Under his deal or tariff strategy, countries that fail to reach a trade agreement with the U.S. by this deadline face tariffs ranging from 15% to as high as 50%. With deals already signed with Japan and the European Union, Trump is claiming momentum. But two of the biggest players, China and Canada, are still holding out. This is no longer just a matter of trade mechanics. It's a global stress test of Trump's leverage and the willingness of others to play by his timeline. After 2 days of negotiations in Stockholm, U.S. and Chinese officials left the table without a signed breakthrough. While Chinese officials announced a 90-day extension of the tariff truce, the U.S. side made it clear that the final decision still rests with Trump, who had not yet signed off. At the center of the talks were American demands. That China reduce purchases of Iranian oil, still accounting for 90% of Iran's sanctioned exports, scale back its industrial overcapacity in steel and electric vehicles, and stop transferring dual-use technology to Russia, reportedly worth $15 billion. China's main concession was symbolic. It agreed to resume exports of rare earth magnets used in U.S. tech and defense manufacturing. But there were no structural changes, no binding commitments. Instead, China kept the conversation going, deliberately. It didn't walk away, but it didn't fold either. Time, in this case, favors Beijing. Trump set the clock ticking, but with no concrete deal, the pause feels more like a delay tactic than a step toward resolution. The world's two largest economies remain locked in a strategic stalemate.
So I think we should not forget where we would have been on the 1st of August. We would have been at 30%. And it would have been much more difficult to get down now to the 15%.
While the US-China talks stall, the European Union took the opposite path. Just days earlier, the EU signed a large-scale trade deal with the US, agreeing to purchase American energy and commit hundreds of billions in new US-based investment. In return, they dodged new tariffs on industrial exports. European officials described the deal as a form of risk management. It wasn't about strategic alignment. It was about avoiding damage. From Brussels to Berlin, the assessment was cautious. This was a deal made under pressure, not because of shared long-term goals, but to escape the threat of 30% to 50% tariffs set to activate August 1st. Trump welcomed it as a win. But among allies, the EU's swift agreement only deepened the divide over how to respond to US pressure. Canada, by contrast, has taken a very different stance. Prime Minister Mark Carney has made it clear: no agreement will be signed unless it brings real long-term value to Canada. Trump has threatened to impose a 35% tariff on all Canadian imports not covered under the existing USMCA starting August 1st. Talks are ongoing in Washington, but the mood remains tense. Trump himself has sounded pessimistic, suggesting Canada might be the country that ends up just paying the tariffs. Yet Carney's government hasn't blinked. Even as pressure mounts, Canadian negotiators are holding the line. Unlike the EU, they are unwilling to make hasty compromises to buy time. This is more than trade. It's a political message about sovereignty and negotiation on equal footing.
I think the trade deals are working out very well, hopefully for everybody, but for the United States, they're very, very good.
Trump's strategy relies on forcing swift decisions through economic pressure. It worked with some countries, but not all. As China and Canada resist, it's clear that Trump's leverage has limits. Instead of unified responses, allies are splintering. Some rush to sign, others dig in. Trump's system of maximum pressure no longer guarantees results. With August 1st fast approaching, Trump may soon find that not every country plays by his clock, and not every deal can be forced into place.